Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hockey Hub podcast. So glad you could join us. Adam Pellerin and Judd Sirott here with you. It is episode 29 of the Hockey Hub podcast, and an appropriate number based on the fact that number 29, Parker Wotherspoon, scored his first NHL goal against the Lightning. You can't make this stuff up, Judd.
Oh, and what a guy to get it against, and Andrei Vasilevsky. I'd been holding that, and Pat White, who works on our production staff, had been holding that graphic ready for his first National Hockey League goal. So it was great to see him get it. I know as we talk about a little bit about the game against the Lightning, that's part of the topic. Not only the fact that Wotherspoon got that goal, but how that defense contributed, not just him, but Andrew Peeke getting his first goal as a Bruin, some of the elevated minutes that had to take place. You're missing Charlie McAvoy for a little bit. So that's sort of the precursors we get underway.
By the way, if you're watching us on YouTube, I mean, we look good. I mean, we got some new Nesson swag that we're wearing.
We finally
right now.
got it, right?
Yeah. I mean, hey, listen, you get it for the stretch run. That's what I'm talking about right now. We got our nice, you got a nice zip up jacket, it looks like, or maybe a 3/4. I can't quite tell. Is it a 3/4 or is it a full
I don't know.
jacket?
You're the fashion plate. You know, I'm new to this whole TV thing. You probably know all this stuff, when it comes to TV clothes. As I told you before we got on, as soon as I walked out of the house, my oldest, as I was dropping the kids off to school, said, can I have that when you're done? So this will be the last time that you're going to see me in it. It's going to be co-op.
Yeah, fair enough. Your long career on the radio, I used to see you wear tank tops walking into the broadcast booth, and nobody knew the difference. So now you got to dress up. You got to dress the part, man. This is TV.
Well, yeah, it's like Harry Carey. One of my favorite Harry Carey pictures was when he was doing a game at Busch Stadium, and I don't know if you've had a chance to go down there in the middle of summer, but it is steamy. And at that point they were playing on turf, and so Harry was doing a game in boxer shorts and dress socks. So that's my goal. That's what it actually looked like when I was doing games with Beersy on 98.5.
There you go. And then eventually you'll have the thick black frame glasses as well as a tribute to Harry Carey. I like that. So that's the evolution of Judd Sirott, gradually turning into Harry Carey over time. So fans look forward to that over the next few years. All right. So we got a lot to talk about. Obviously, the Bruins with a big win over the Lightning, 6-2. Your final from TD Garden. It felt like forever since I heard you and Brick. I mean, I know it was only one national game in between the last game in Tampa and the Tuesday game at TD Garden, but it felt like forever. It was good to hear you guys. And, the conversation going into the game was, hey, you know what? Big win over the Panthers on Saturday. It was the end of the mom's trip. I was in the suite with the moms. They were very excited. There were, some highs, some lows, obviously, with the Panthers tying it up with just less than 2 seconds left on the clock. But the Bruins somehow, some way, able to find a way to win, despite the fact that they gave up 43 shots on net and 111 attempted shots by the Panthers. But they needed that win. They had a 6-game winless streak going in. So, okay, how are you going to follow it up? And that is what we have said time and time again with the Bruins over the course of the season. How are they going to follow it up? Well, once again, they allowed 40-plus shots on net. But the difference was, Judd, is that they jumped out to a big lead. They got off to a good start, and they set the tone with a much different-looking lineup, which we'll get to as well. Overall, thoughts on the win?
Wow, there's so much meat on the bone, Adam. First of all, it was a fabulous game. I think I told a story on the air during the course of the game that I was walking around to the TV booth, and there was an older couple that came by and said, this is our first Bruins game ever. And I'd mentioned to him before the start of the game, well, you picked a good one. And that was a fabulous game. And I think, Adam, as we continue the Hockey Hub, I think one of the things that I'm going to beat the drum on here over the course of how many of these that we do is that you need to play more division games in the National Hockey League because of these type of scenarios. And I think the other thing to just kind of dive back into the game is 4 games is just not enough. You just really want more because you elicit the type of competition, the type of animosity, and that's when the game is at its best that we saw last night at TD Garden. So you just wish, can you even make it 5 games against the division? Because you can see what type of hockey that you get out of it. But nevertheless, for the Bruins, and I think your point is a really good one, the Bruins got off to a great start in that game against the best first period team in the National Hockey League. They built a 2-0 lead. They played fast. They played the right way. I know we're going to dive into the conversation about Matt Poitras, but just in the bigger picture, so you get out of that opening 20 minutes with that 2-0 lead, and what do you do in that second period? You add on, and you add on quickly. And they spread the wealth. Look at the people who scored the goals last night. Trent Frederick opened it up on a feed from Matt Poitras. Parker Wotherspoon gets his first ever National Hockey League goal. You move into the second period. Brad Marchand gets on the board for the first time in 3 weeks. David Pastrnak with his 20th of the season, set up by Pavel Zacha, who had a 3-point night. Now, yes, the Bruins did allow a couple of goals after that, which made it a little bit dicey in the third. But as you look at that third period, and yes, the Bruins spent far too much time in their own zone in their third period, or in that third period. But as I look down at the notes, and again, I know you love this. The notes.
I do. Yeah, there you go.
Look at that. I can read.
Man. Dr. Sirott is in.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. See a doctor and he'll help you get rid of it. Really, other than maybe a sneaky Victor Hedman chance coming up the left side into the left dot, I don't think that the Bruins really allowed any grade A chances. They just spent way too much time and they were under too much duress in their own zone before they got a couple of empty netters and sealed that one. But it was a terrific victory. Great to see them follow it up, get back-to-back wins. And I know one of the big topics we're going to talk about is the number one star here in the last 2 games, Jeremy Swayman.
Yeah, no question about that. And I was just looking at Natural Stat Trick. And, again, you look at the game against the Florida Panthers, and if everything besides the final score would tell you that the Panthers outplayed the Bruins, and you would think that they would win that game. And even if you look at these numbers, right, the numbers don't always tell the full story, right? But in terms of scoring chances for 29-11 in favor of the Lightning, high danger chances for 14-3 in favor of the Lightning. And that, the majority of those high danger chances came in that second period when the Lightning started to make their push. And then we saw in the third period, and to your point, Judd, and what you're saying, it's backed up by the numbers. Just 3 high danger chances for the Lightning, trailing the Bruins by 2 goals in that third period. And that includes some 6-on-5, right? And so that gives the Bruins, something to build off, right? Where they're able to, get ahead and stay ahead.
Yes. And I think in the other topic is because, so yesterday we get the news that Charlie McAvoy, and you and I had a chance to do the morning skate along with Brick over at Warrior. And we saw Charlie McAvoy joining Hampus Lindholm before the morning skate. And I think a lot of us kind of raised our eyebrows like, what happened here?
Yeah.
Because Charlie McAvoy had been a full participant the day before at practice on Monday. And then we got the news that Charlie McAvoy was heading to injured reserve, and the Bruins are going to evaluate his condition, it sounds like, after the Ottawa game on Saturday, because it's a light week. And then it's really going to start to pick up. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about the schedule here going forward. But think about the guys that now have to elevate their minutes and play in some very different situations. You are missing your top 2 defensemen. So if you look at some of the minutes from last night's game, and I think I cut and pasted some of the minutes from last night. So Mason Lohrei, I believe, was your leader at 22:37 last night on the back end. If you go down a little bit further, Parker Wotherspoon, 21 minutes and 20 seconds. Andrew Peeke played just a shade under 21 minutes.
He was outstanding last night, by the way. He was outstanding on Tuesday night.
He did some great stuff. He was a +4 in the game. Nikita Zadorov, now his minutes might have been a little bit higher had he not spent 7 minutes in the penalty box, one of which was a fight with Eric Chernak, where he wanted to stand up to Chernak, who took a couple of runs at Brad Marchand.
Right, exactly.
That started in the third period. He ended up playing 18-24. So now you've got guys, and in addition to that, again, there's so much to talk about from last night's game and what's going on with the Bruins. Michael Callahan, And congratulations to him, a kid from Franklin making his National Hockey League debut with his hometown team. He ended up playing a solid 14 minutes last night, and he was a +1. But everybody's role changes, and the minutes are elevated. And now you're asking guys, and I know that it ended up as a 6-2 score, but the game felt a lot closer to that because it was a 2-goal game in the final minutes when Tampa got an opportunity with a power play, and they pulled for the extra attacker, and the Bruins scored 2 shorthanded goals. But those guys were pressed into some very serious situations late in the game to make sure that the Bruins secured the points.
Well, I'll tell you too, right? And, again, there is so much to talk about, and it does feel like we're going all over the place, but every time one of us makes a point, I think it spurs a memory, from last night's game. And you mentioned that the game, it was 6-2 final, it was 4-0 for a while, then it became 4-2, and it felt close. And I think at one point, the Bruins up 2-0 after the first period. By the way, Bruins 11-1-2 and leading after 1. It's the second time in the last 10 games that they've led after the first period. They've won both games. The other game was Columbus. And I know most teams in the NHL have a winning record, a good record when they're leading after the first period, but the Bruins record is exceptionally good. And it just shows you how important it is for this team to get off to a good start, not only on the scoreboard, but just to create some sort of momentum moving forward. The Bruins had a power play, about 57 seconds left on the power play to start the second period, and the Bruins came up empty on that power play. And just as time expired, Victor Hedman had a great opportunity on the other end, missed the net, and the Bruins come back the other way, and they make that a 3-0 game. So you go from, a potential 2-1 game at that point and a failed power play that you're thinking, oh no, power play doesn't come through again, and it doesn't generate any momentum. Instead, it generates momentum on the other side. Instead, the Bruins come back and get that goal from Brad Marchand, which, Brick had said, right, that was a classic Brad Marchand goal, right? It was a thing of beauty. And it's 3-0, right? And so that was, to me, that was a huge swing right there.
Oh, absolutely. And Adam, think back to the game that we were all at in Tampa. So the Bruins, they didn't have a great first period. The penalty killing and Jeremy Swayman was excellent. It was a scoreless game heading into the second period. Then the Bruins started to get their legs. They started to play a little bit better. They got a power play chance. And what happened on their first power play chance? They allowed a shorthanded goal. Well, now everything was flipped here because the Bruins, yes, they were unable to take advantage of that man advantage at the tail end of that first period, which bled over into the second period. But to your point, and maybe this is the hockey gods turning things around, and we had this conversation with Pavel Zacha before the Tampa Bay game that in the past, Victor Hedman scores in that situation. And then Tampa gets back into the game, and it's 2-1 at that point. But it didn't happen. And instead, Hedman misses on the odd man opportunity, and Brad Marchand comes into the left circle and drills one in. That was a great sign for the team. It had been hard for Brad Marchand here recently in the last couple of weeks to generate some scoring opportunities. I think in part Joe Sacco said that had something to do with the matchup. And Brad Marchand, as he always is, very honest, and he said we simply weren't good enough. Now, his line changed a little bit last night. You had Vinny Lettieri coming up and playing on the right side along.
What a shot, Lindholm. By the way. My goodness, if you haven't seen Vinny Lettieri before, man, what a rocket.
So that's the scouting report on him. If you talk to the people in Providence, he's an elite American Hockey League scorer. Prior to the call-up, he was third in the American Hockey League in scoring. And that shot is an elite-level shot. And when the American League guys are saying that, they are talking about that from an NHL prospect perspective. Now, he's a little bit older than that, and he is like your typical journeyman player, having bounced around to a bunch of different teams, but he can rip the puck. The issue with him, if we kind of go off onto a tangent with Vinny, is if you have that type of offensive ability and you're going to stay in the National Hockey League, you've got to score. You got to have those opportunities. But I thought last night he was an asset for the Bruins, and he certainly helped in the cause in that 6-2 victory.
Yeah, you could see the speed, right, which was on display. Drew a penalty in that game, a hooking penalty that led to a Bruins power play opportunity. But
yeah, Victor Hedman shouldn't have gotten that penalty. I don't know how he got away with that. At first
Hagel.
I thought,
at
first I'm
right? That's who they called it on, right?
Yeah, they called it on Hagel.
Yeah.
So Lettieri's busting up the right side. Victor Hedman grabs him like it's the 1970s National Hockey League. And they let that go. And then we'll call it on Hagel. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah, who hooked Matt Poitras that got no whistle last night either? That happened at one point in the game. You called it out. He got held. I can't remember. But anyway, it was within the flow of the game. Those are a couple of things that stood out. You said, oh, man, no whistle there. But anyway, we mentioned Brad Marchand, too. Just, again, jumping around a little bit. But, Brad Marchand, scores for the first time in 9 games, scores for the first time post-holiday break. But I looked at his last 4 goals before that. 2 empty netters, one against Washington, one against Buffalo. He had a power play goal. He had a penalty shot as well in Seattle, right? His last 5-on-5 goal was December 7th against the Philadelphia Flyers. So it had been a long time since the captain had scored 5-on-5 and now has 16 goals on the year. So, all right, let's transition. We've mentioned him. But we haven't really taken a deep dive into Jeremy Swayman's performance. Just outstanding for the Bruins on Tuesday night and Saturday in Florida. Season high 42 saves for Swayman. And I want to hear from Jeremy Swayman, and then we'll get into the conversation about the Bruins goaltender.
I think having a strong start helped us a lot, especially in our building, and setting the tone, with how we want to play and maintain play throughout all 60 minutes. So that's a huge momentum builder for us, and I'm excited to continue that.
Especially from a response standpoint, you guys responded well, probably one of the best of the season. So just, what does that make you guys feel?
Yeah, it's important. That was an emotional win. The way that they handled the end of the game when we were in Florida was unacceptable, and our guys stepped up, and we made a statement tonight, and that's a good feeling as a group, coming together and getting a job done the right way and the respectful way. And that's something that we can build on as a group and move forward with.
All right, so Jeremy Swayman talking about the team performance and the team response, but let's talk about the individual and how good he has been for the Bruins. And it hasn't been an easy season for Jeremy Swayman in terms of his performance, right? And I think obviously we've talked about the contract, talked about the fact no training camp, no preseason. It's taken a while for him to sort of get his legs underneath him. It's taken a while for him to adjust to the fact that he is the number one guy now, I think. But now really, and it's not just these last couple of games, you started to see it develop over time, where you're seeing, flashes of, okay, that's the number one goaltender. That's the guy who earned the big contract. But over these last 2 games, he stole the game on Saturday. You can make it. He was the first star of the game, at least, against the Lightning. He has been a bona fide number 1 star goaltender over the last couple of games, Judd.
No, he's been excellent. And we had this conversation when we were at the morning skate yesterday with Andrew Raycroft, and it's different being the de facto number 1. This isn't 1A, 1B in the situation that he was in with Linus Ullmark. So now you're seeing the bulk of the action. The expectations are different. The workload is different. And I thought Andrew Raycroft brought up a great point yesterday when he talked about the transition to being the number 1 guy and then having the number 2 as Jonas Korpisalo, that when you're playing a heavy schedule and the schedule is a little bit more compressed because of the February break for the Four Nations tournament, that it's about maintaining. It's about making sure you're ready game to game. But because you don't have as much practice time and because you don't have as much time off, it doesn't give you the opportunity to get better. Or as I think Razor talked about, going to goalie school and working on a few things so you're more prepared for the next time you go in. Now the schedule has started to lighten up here a little bit, and I think you've seen Swayman have the opportunity to work on a few things. But here in the last few, I think what really stands out, his positioning. When Tuukka Rask was on his game, what made him look so good was how effortless some of the saves looked because he was in such great position. How many times did we see in that Tampa Bay Lightning game, and remember, they peppered him with a ton of shots. That puck was hitting him right in the chest. which tells you he's in the exact right position. He wasn't scrambling around. He wasn't diving around. He wasn't out of position. He didn't have to lunge or make some super athletic move to make a lot of those saves. He made a lot of that work look easy. It's not, which tells you how dialed in he was. And he was able to control a lot of the rebounds. You referenced on Natural Stat Trick some of the high-quality chances that Tampa was able to generate, but it was fairly quiet out in front of him. And a lot of credit also goes to the D-men in front of him to allow him to see those shots and then cover up any rebounds that were loose out in front.
Yeah, and just think of the goals that he allowed, too. One was a deflection off the stick of Connor Geekie, shot by Victor Hedman, deflected by Geekie. The other one was a close range Victor Hedman. And so, everything else, I mean, he was a brick wall. And even the game against the Panthers, right? He allows 3 goals. One's on the power play. One was a crazy deflection at the end of the game that goes over Jordan Osterley's glove and just goes over the shoulder of Swayman. But otherwise, he's just been incredible. And you would have to think, Judd, and we talked about this before we came on, we like to have our pre-production conversation, talk about the show and illustrate some points. And one of the things that you brought up was the fact that you're going to see a lot of Jeremy Swayman because of the fact that the schedule is easing up a little bit, at least this week. But more importantly, because of where the Bruins are in the standings, 46 games down. And if you take a look at the Atlantic Division going into play on Wednesday night, it is as tight as I can remember it.
No, very much so. And that's exactly what it is. And this is where, if you're the goalie coach, and Bob Ascenz is making out the schedule, I think you have an idea of where you want to go. And I think that he values trying to get some of his goaltenders a little bit of rest, both physically and mentally, and give them an opportunity, as Razor talked about, to sharpen their game, work on a few things so they're even better as the season rolls around. But you're in a spot right now, based on the schedule and based on how close things are, that you have to play your number one guy maybe a little bit more than you would like. This week is light. Next week we'll start to pick up. And I think when we see Joonas Korpisalo, how often we see Joonas Korpisalo, it might be a little bit less because of the start that the Bruins have gotten off to. In the bigger picture, and I know, again, we're diving around because there's so much going on with the team, going on with the game, that the Bruins have not been in this situation for probably 9 years.
Yeah. It came down to the last game of the season against Ottawa, oddly enough, who they're going to face next on Saturday, and they end up finishing the season with 93 points. Tuukka Rask was ill. 90 minutes before puck drop or so, you find out he's not playing. The Bruins don't get into the postseason. I'm not saying it's going to come down to the last game of the season, Judd, but it could.
Oh, there's certainly that chance because everything is so tight. And that's why it's so valuable to win those 4-point games, because you're not going to get many opportunities. You only have 2 left against a team like Tampa and some of the other teams that you're going to be vying with. And that's the importance of the Ottawa game. After that game, you're only going to see them 2 more times. So you have to be able to take advantage while you're on the road. But if you think back, I think to the 17-18 season, the Bruins got off to a sluggish start. Then they started to figure it out. And by the time they hit the middle of January, they were in a good position. They didn't have a playoff spot secured necessarily at that point, but they were in a much stronger position than they are now. Pavel Zacha had mentioned to us the other day, in the last 2 seasons, if you would look back at this point in the campaign, I think most people felt like the Bruins were like, okay, we're on the cusp of earning a playoff spot. That's how good the starts were.
They're resting guys at this point.
But I think the good thing that Pavel Zacha mentioned was, and he liked this because now every game is so meaningful down the stretch, especially when you're going to face Eastern Conference foes, division foes from the Atlantic, that it's going to force this team to dial in, that they're going to be playing playoff hockey here for about 3 months, unless they get really hot and then secure a position maybe earlier than we expect at this point. But they're going to be playing some intense games here down the stretch. And as hockey fans, we're going to have a chance to watch this and cover it. It's going to be some great hockey here between now and the middle of April.
Yeah, and again, I'm not making any projections by any means, or whatsoever. But I will say there's something to be said, for playing with urgency, right? During the regular season, making a push, right? You can make, you could cite some recent examples of that with the Florida Panthers, right? Who ended up going to the Stanley Cup final a couple of years ago. They get in, at the last moments, right? And so they're fighting for their playoff lives. They get in, they carry that momentum into the postseason. You can make the St. Louis Blues, right? And I hate bringing that team up from 2019, but there was a coaching change. They had a losing record. They're playing, they're fighting, they're scratching and clawing to try and get into the postseason. So there is precedent, right? When you're in the middle of a race early and you have to play playoff type games at this point in the season, it can really benefit you.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And Pavel Zacha actually echoed that. It's hard to simulate that. Just to take it as an example, like a lot of people, and we haven't seen a lot of shootouts this year, but for teams that struggle in the shootout, they ask, why can't you practice it? It's hard to simulate that type of a situation. 20,000 people, game on your stick. You can't simulate that. If you're in practice. In the same way, you can't simulate the type of do or die, I've got to win this battle, every one-on-one is going to matter, every pass, every play. That's the type of mindset you can't simulate as much as you may try. Okay, we're going to focus in on this 5-game segment. Let's see how we do, or let's make these next 7 games like a playoff series. In theory, it works, but in practice, it doesn't. And for the Bruins, if they're able to get through this and make their way into the playoffs, it will certainly serve them well when the Stanley Cup playoffs begin, if they're able to make it and get through this portion of the season.
Absolutely. So, buckle up over the last 36 games of the year, man, for sure. They're in a battle, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch from a fan's perspective, especially. All right, so we've talked about the game. We've heard from Jeremy Swayman. I'd like to get to Brick's conversation with interim head coach Joe Sacco, and then we can react on the back end of that.
Joe, Jeremy Swayman has had several strong games in goal for you guys this year, but the last 2, he's been exceptional. What are you seeing maybe that's a little different in his game?
I really don't know the difference right now. The thing that I see from where I'm sitting is just his ability to control rebounds, his ability to fight through traffic, because they did a pretty good job of that here tonight. Just looking square to the puck. I mean, he just looks like, he's rounding. He's getting to look like his old self again. So it's a really good sign for us.
Yeah, you mentioned all the traffic that he had to put up with, and I'm curious. I know it was a point of emphasis because of the low-high game and how much is generated by point shots from Tampa. How were you guys in terms of the way you defended in front of Swayman?
Well, I would have liked to seen us up top block some more shots from our forwards. We know that that has to be part of our game plan when teams are going to go low to high on us. And then around our net front, you're either fronting or you're boxing out, and it's one or the other. You can't do, you got to make sure you're either going to tie up a stick or you're going to box out or you're going to front the puck. So something that we probably could have did a better job of here tonight. I felt like we got the lead early. They, when obviously they pushed real hard, but I still like the response from our guys. I know that we gave up a lot of shots, but I like the response. It was a physical game. It was an entertaining game from that standpoint.
Yeah, I know the fans certainly loved the answers that you guys had physically, particularly the way the game went in Tampa. Lastly, the offense looked really good, building that 4-0 lead. What was working?
Well, I think that early on we established how we wanted to play. I mean, obviously we got that quick goal off the rush there. Matty makes a nice play to Freddie. But it was actually started with Charlie Coyle doing a good job, I think, fronting the puck, what we were just talking about in the D zone. Then after that, you get a couple of goals by playing, behind their forecheck, and something that we've been preaching with our guys, something that we still have to continue to work on and improve on. But that's kind of where it started.
Congratulations on the W. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks, Brick.
All right, so that was Joe Sacco after the Bruins win. The breakouts were especially good early for the Bruins. It led to opportunities, which was, again, talking about some of the offense that they generated early in this game, Judd.
They were. Listen, there was a lot to get to even from the Joe Sacco interview, but Matty Poitras, he comes back up. The Bruins call up 3 guys from Providence who all make their, for Poitras, he'd played 14 games earlier in the season, but all mixed into the lineup last night, and all had an impact. For a guy like Matt Poitras, I think one of the things that stood out, and Joe Sacco had talked about that after the morning skate, is that the Bruins could use his speed to transport the puck through the middle of the ice. And we saw that, and his ability to make plays. I think that the Bruins haven't generated a whole lot of offense off of the rush this year.
Yeah, he's mentioned that specifically as well.
Heading into last night's game, again, they're 28th in the National Hockey League, and it's hard to play that playoff-style grinding offense. Dump it down low, win a battle, go low to high, get a second opportunity, screen the goaltender, battle for those second opportunities. They scored some goals off the rush last night, and they generated some odd man opportunities. And so that's what a guy like Matt Poitras can do, is to play with that skill. He's a playmaker, and he can wheel with the puck. But I think in the bigger picture, and this is one of the things that you and I had a chance to hammer out during our pre-show talk, he had an excellent game last night. Now you got to do it again and again and again and again. And the other thing that you have to think about is he's 20 years old. So there's going to be some dips. He's still learning how to be a National Hockey Leaguer. But I think going down to Providence, where he had a chance to get more ice, more reps, get in better shape, find the confidence in his game, you could see all of that benefit the Bruins last night.
Yeah, you could. We'll continue the conversation on Matt Poitras, but I want to get to this first, if I could, because you are watching the Hockey Hub. And if you like what you hear, then make sure to like and subscribe to the show. Hockey Hub can be found on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever else podcasts are found. There's always time to promote the show, Judd, even if we're in mid-thought.
I'll tell you what, nobody can make a smooth segue like that. I challenge anybody at this network to make a segue better than you.
I bring it down a little bit, and then I bring us back up, and then we're back into the conversation. And there we go.
You're like the Nesson DJ.
Yeah, that's right. On the ones and twos, Adam Pellerin. Wiki. All right. Yeah, showing our age there. So anyway, Matt Poitras, I don't know if people, realize or remember. I mean, this is a 20-year-old, right? He's a 20-year-old who made his NHL debut last year, right? Remember, again, not to recap Matt Poitras' life story here, but nobody really expected him to make the team out of training camp. He ends up making the team. They have to make a decision whether or not they send him back to juniors. He sticks with the team. Then he suffers the season-ending shoulder injury, right? And he has off-season shoulder surgery, and he has to build himself back up. And then he's back with the Bruins, and then he gets hurt in the preseason. And so you're thinking, oh, man, another injury to deal with. So he ends up joining the Bruins, gives him a little, push, right? And I'm trying to think of the game where he made his season debut, but he made an impact, right? And you're like, all right, this we're picking up where we left off, the promise of Matt Poitras. But then to your point, this is a young kid, has a dip, gets sent down to Providence, and so it was interesting to hear him talk the other day when he got called up, talking about gaining more confidence, being more comfortable, and really falling in love with the game again and not worrying about tomorrow and focusing on the present. So, yeah, great that he gets all this ice time, great that he gets puck touches, great that he was producing in Providence, but he was getting his mind right too, Judd, which was a big part of it.
Oh, that's a huge part of it. And remember, these are 20-year-old kids. And all these kids who the Bruins draft or every National Hockey League drafts, you want them to get to the National Hockey League as fast as possible. Everybody gets there. I know that the saying is you're there when you're ready. Sometimes guys are called up before they're ready. But Poitras forced the Bruins' hand last year based on the way that he played in training camp. He earned the opportunity to be with the Bruins. But the catch was that based on his age and where he played prior to coming to the Bruins, they couldn't send him to the American Hockey League. If he were a European player, they could have sent him down. We can have that other discussion later. But for a lot of these guys, and I know that you and I have had these discussions with Brick and Beersy and a lot of people, you want to give these kids an opportunity to learn the game at the American Hockey League level. there is so much to learn. There is so much to take in, especially the mental side of the game. One of the things that he talked about was you get sent down for the first time, and you're so down in the dumps, you think like your world is over. And that's not the case. This is a job. You're a professional. How do you get better? How do you get yourself back up there? And that's just part of the process that you have to learn as a pro. And listen, I would love it, and I'm sure every Bruins fan would love it, and certainly the team and the personnel people would love it if he played last night if he played every game going forward the way he played last night. It's not a reality. It's not going to happen, especially with a young player. You're going to have those ebbs and flows. There's going to be some dips, and there's going to be some peaks in his game. And what I think you want to try and get out is get more consistency in his game as he grows as a player. But if he can continue to do that and provide the Bruins with that spark, the speed, the ability to transport the puck, to make plays, to be a reliable 200-foot player, that's going to be a huge benefit to the Bruins going forward.
Absolutely. And, they need it, right? they need the help. And if Matt Poitras can provide that presence on the ice, that would be huge for the team moving forward. And, you like seeing him on a line with Charlie Coyle, right? Because he can protect him a little bit. He can take faceoffs, and, Matt Poitras doesn't have to worry about that part of the game. And we've all talked about the center position in the Bruins and their, the responsibilities defensively. It's a lot for anybody, never mind a 20-year-old. And so, and the other thing that Joe Sacco had said too, you learn how to play away from the puck, but we don't want to take away his offensive abilities, right? They want to make sure that they put that front and center as well.
Oh, I've seen that in the past. I've seen guys, talented first-round picks, that they come up to the National Hockey League and they're put in completely checking roles, fourth-line players, and they stay there and they never move out of there. And then the moment that they make an offensive play and they make a mistake, the coach just tears them a new one, and then they're afraid to make plays, and then their game starts to go downhill. And then they become, okay, I'm a checker, I guess. And that's not what you want, because there's a lot more ability and potential in Matt Poitras' game to help the Bruins. I think that I think what you would hope is that he's a guy who can if he continues along the developmental path that you want, and it's not going to be a smooth one. It's not going to be a straight line going up. There's going to be some dips in there, but he projects out to be a player who can play in your top six. I don't think that you project him as a fourth-line center. So you have to make sure that he has the ability to bring that out of his game.
For more on the Bruins and the biggest trending news in the sports world, check out Boston Has Entered the Chat, hosted by George Bellecci and Travis Thomas. Available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and wherever else podcasts are found. Adam Pellerin, Judd Sirott, episode number 29 of the Hockey Hub. 46 games down for the Boston Bruins, 36 games left to go. And as it turns out, they have played an even number of games on home ice and on the road, 23 and 23. And the next matchup for the Bruins is against the Ottawa Senators. They will see the Senators twice in a span of 5 days, in Ottawa on Saturday, and then the second of a back-to-back, the first in New Jersey and the second on home ice, and that will be against the Senators. And in between that is a matinee, an MLK Day matinee against Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith, and the San Jose Sharks, who I know Hockey East fans will be looking forward to seeing those two players return to TD Garden on Monday. But if you look at the schedule for the Bruins, it again eases up, this week, because you have, the 3 days off in between games and the time to get on the ice at Warrior and get some solid practice time in, which is something the Bruins haven't been able to do for a long time, right? Because if you go back to December, you had that Western Canada trip where the team was gone for 2 weeks. They come back, they play a couple of games before the holiday break. They hop on the plane on the 27th. They head to Columbus, a back-to-back. Then they go on the road, right? So it was just a lot. They hadn't had a lot of practice time.
I'm exhausted listening to you talk about that.
I mean, I'm running out of breath. I might have to do another promo. I won't, though. But yeah, so Judd, in terms of the schedule, Senators, Sharks, Devils, Senators, and then a home game against the Avalanche, 12 games before the 2-week break. So that is what is ahead of the Bruins.
Yes, and we have the opportunity to look at the bigger picture. I think for players, they go game to game. So two things. I think because of the light schedule, it gives the opportunity for the Bruins, and this is some of the things that some of the players have talked about. Not only can you rest, but you can practice and you can zero in on that next opponent. And that's going to be the Ottawa Senators. That team has a lot of skill. I think the question mark for them is Linus Ullmark has been out of the lineup. He's apparently dealing with a back injury. So Ottawa has to find a way. And they went through a lengthy road trip. They were on the road for a while the building hosted the World Junior Championships. So now they're back home. They have an opportunity to try and recoup. But I think for the Bruins, it gives them a chance to zero in on that opponent, which helps them. And then you come back next week, you're going to see a team you don't have a rivalry with, a team that's not going to make the playoffs in the San Jose Sharks. You cannot get lulled into an idea that could be a trap game. They've been very competitive this year, and they've got a lot of good young talent. That'll take place on Monday. Then it starts to really pick up. The Devils have a ton of speed and skill. Yeah. They fortified their back end. They've got a new goalie in Jacob Markstrom, and they look to be in the playoff mix under their new head coach, Sheldon Keefe. Then you got Ottawa again, second game of a back-to-back, and I haven't looked to see if the Senators are playing the night before or if they're sitting and waiting for the Bruins in Boston. Oh, and then you finish the week with Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Cale Makar. Go get them.
Yeah, no big deal. And that's a team that you beat in Colorado, and I'm sure they'll have a little bee in their bonnet.
They have two new goalies since the Bruins saw them last. That's right. Pretty rare. They changed out their entire goaltending tandem.
Yeah, that is pretty wild. And so speaking of goaltending, I mean, you figure Jonas Korpisalo is going to get some looks, right? I mean, you sort of projected, and we were talking about it, maybe the game against San Jose, in one of those two games, probably against his former team in the Senators in the second of a back-to-back.
So I think if you had mapped this out before the start of the season and just looked at this, because Ottawa's a division foe, that's Swayman. I think because of the position that the Bruins are currently in at this point, and because that's a division game, it's definitely going to be Swayman. Then the question is, well, how do you want to handle San Jose? I think if you looked at this at the beginning of the season, that would probably be Jonas Korpisalo. But I don't know if that's a given that's going to be Korpisalo, because you're going to split the two goalies. Don't know who it's going to be. The Devils are not a divisional opponent. So do you want to give Korpisalo that opportunity on the road and leave Swayman for home ice? Or make it Swayman on the front end and, hey, Jonas, you get an opportunity to face off against your old team. So I think that's a decision that we're going to have to watch. And then there's no question Swayman's going to get the start against the Colorado Avalanche. And then as you keep going, you got 2 days off against Buffalo. That's Swayman. And then it's going to be Hellebuck against Swayman 2 nights at that point at the end of January against the Winnipeg Jets. So you're going to probably see a lot of Swayman and maybe a little bit more than you expected at this point of the season.
Yeah, and again, we talked about, before the season started, how many games did Jeremy Swayman start? And I think the sweet spot we all sort of landed on, for the most part, was 55 games. I think he's going to hit 60. I mean, he got 36 games left in the year.
He's already at 33 games. He's played in 33 of the first 46. And that's – I know that, typically in the past, goalie Bob would want Tuukka Rask to play, and even before that. I think the ideal number is probably around 55. I think you're probably right. But you're in a different situation at this point because points are so valuable. And maybe – also the schedule's a little bit different. In the past, you weren't dealing with a Four Nations tournament. It's been a while since the league is shut down for the Olympics. So that also changes out how you map out your goaltending.
Yep. So that is going to be a storyline to watch as we get closer to the 2-week break and throughout the season. And man, things happen fast, right? I mean, you got that break, you come out of the break, and then you got 25 games left in the year. The trade deadline's right around the corner. I mean, this is the time of year. They call it the dog days, but when you're at a playoff race like this, they ain't no dog days. Every game is meaningful. Every game is important. And so that's what's facing the Bruins right now.
It's better than August baseball, baby.
Yeah, especially when you're out of the race. When you're in the race, it's a lot more entertaining. Hopefully, the Red Sox are in the race this year.
Yes,
but
I can't wait to see Garrett Crochet.
Yeah, there you go. That's a story for another podcast, though, Judd, which I also pop in on from time to time. All right, so we got Bruins hockey this weekend, but we also have some great college hockey action on NESN as well. Friday night, we got BU facing off against UNH. Which is going to be something to watch for sure. But before we get to a great interview, I want to tell you about Foxborough Rush because we had some Patriots news. I don't know if you heard about that. Got a new head coach in Foxborough, Mike Vrabel. And if you want the latest on the Patriots in the NFL, you can get it quick on NESN's football podcast, Foxborough Rush, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever else podcasts are found. All right, as I was starting to say, great college hockey action this weekend, including BU and UNH. And our own Billy Jaffe had an opportunity to catch up with head coach of the Wildcats, Mike Souza.
And we welcome in the head coach of New Hampshire, Mike Souza. Always fantastic to see you, Mike. How's everything going so far?
Everything's going well. Licking our wounds a little bit after this past weekend, but all in all, things are pretty good, Billy. Thanks.
You mentioned the last weekend you had 2 games against UConn. You lost both those games. Now you got to get reset because you're going to take on BU for the next 2 games. In fact, we've got your Friday on NESN. Let's just get right to where your team is at. Overall record, 10-6-3. Not bad. Hockey East, just 2-5-2 so far. What needs to get better? What needs to change for your team in Hockey East?
Yeah, I mean, we got to create a way to win some games. I think it's a different animal. Our league, I think it's the best league in college hockey. I think, that's proven itself to be true again this year with the parity in the league. And, we've played good hockey so far this year. And I thought UConn did a great job against us last weekend. Disappointing, but new day today, new opportunity to get better. And obviously you mentioned the Terriers coming in on Friday. It'd be a tall order for us, but our focus right now is on us and getting back to being a more detailed hockey club. I thought we got away from that last weekend. I thought we got outworked at times. Mike's team did a nice job, but hit the reset button. Got to find a way to get some wins in Hockey East.
Had a nice year last year, and I'm not living in the past, but just bringing up a team went 20-15-1. Again, your record overall this year, 10-6-1 or 10-6-3, pretty solid. But how different are these 2 teams from last year to this year, Coach?
Yeah, interestingly enough, we have a lot of guys back from last year's team, right? And that was a good problem for us to have. The core of our group is back, especially our D core. So some great experience there last year. We fell short from making the NCAA tournament. One of our points of emphasis coming into the year was to take care of business in our non-league games. We went 8-1-1 in our non-league games, so that was a kind of a box checked, right? And then you want to take care of business in Hockey East, so that's obviously, as you mentioned, that's a work in progress for us. But I love our team, I love our kids in our team. I think we've got great leadership, and I'm optimistic about the second half. We just got to get one in the win column here. So it's been a bit since we played Hockey East games too. So aside from this past weekend, so the guys are well aware. It's all order with BU coming in, but we like our group a lot, Bill.
If I remember correctly, only 3 freshmen listed on your roster, but you still got some other first-year UNH players with the transfers, et cetera. And in particular, I noticed that it's 2 new goaltenders this year compared to last season. You have Jared Whale, who went to Anchorage previously, and then Rico DiMatteo, who was at Long Island last year. Jared has played almost all exclusively for you guys. What has he done well? What do you like most about his game?
Yeah, I mean, the nature of college athletics today. We had one of our goalies enter the transfer portal last year, so we immediately went out and tried to fill that void. I thought we did a great job as a staff, or my staff did a great job identifying Jared and getting him in the stable, so to speak. And we had a kid who had played the bulk of our games last year, Jakob Helston, who was again a transfer from North Dakota. Mm-hmm. He ended up signing in the Swedish Elite League towards the end of the transfer portal deadline, and that left us, needing to find another goalie. We were able to find Rico, and Jared's really emerged as a true number 1 for us. He was an experienced goalie at Anchorage that had some big wins. was in a league, an independent league. Now he's in Hockey East. The stakes are a little bit higher. I think his game has continued to evolve and get better each and every week. Our goalie coach, Sean McGuire, has done an awesome job with him. So I think that it's a confident team in front of him. He's proven that he can win games, not only in non-league games, but he can win Hockey East games as well.
Coach, you talk about details, right? Getting back to that. One of the things that your team, at least statistically, has done well on both your special teams. Power plays almost at 21%, PK, almost 87, 88% there. So is it as simple from the outside looking in, just 5-on-5 details? Is that what you're talking about? Is that where your game needs the most attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think our 5-on-5 numbers defensively, I think we're top 5 in the country in fewest shots allowed per game. Our offensive numbers 5-on-5 are okay. I mean, they're probably in the middle of the pack. No, it's the same stuff I hear you talking about on the broadcast, with the crew. It's about puck management through the middle of the rink. It's about, time and score, making sure we're making the situational hockey. With a veteran team, it's about playing better situational hockey than your opponent. I thought we got away from that a little bit last week. Case in point, we gave up 2 shorthanded goals. UConn, albeit, leads the country in shorthanded goals. We gave up a couple power play goals, which we hadn't. So, because we took ill-advised penalties, something that we hadn't done. So it's just a matter of being detailed in sort of our situational management of the game. And I thought we had gotten away from that a little bit last week. But a credit to UConn, they did a great job against us.
All right, so BU, they've been pretty good this year. They up and down a little bit as well. What do you expect? What do you coach up heading into this weekend series?
Yeah, I mean, obviously familiar with Jay's team and the structure and detail that they play with. Really, really talented group of forwards. I mean, they got, a bunch of guys that can beat you, and Ryan Green and Yzerman, and then they've got some decor that can really skate. Will Lander and obviously Hudson, and you just go down the list. It's like an all-star team, right? But being around Hockey East for a long time, you become accustomed to that. And again, it's just more of what we just talked about, being structured, being detailed, and not being outworked, or making sure that we play to our identity. I thought last year we had some good games against them, beat them up here, had a great game down at the Aganis, so they took it to us pretty good in the third game. But this week's going to be about a lot of focus on UNH and making sure that we manage ourselves appropriately, manage our game. I'm sure Jay's telling his kids the same thing. Every one of us in Hockey East knows that on any given night, if you're not at your best, you're not going to win. So the focus is on us being at our best, and I'm sure that's the talk over on ComAb as well.
It's such a tough league, and it has been now. It really kind of is on the upswing again the last couple of years. The depth, it's even more than parity, at least in my opinion, Mike. It's a way that the amount of players, the high quality players, the goaltending has really taken big leaps and bounds. And so I'm sure as a coach, maybe it's frustrating. It's wonderfully challenging, I'm sure, getting ready for every one of these Hockey East weekends.
Yeah, I mean, it can be exhausting. Talking to other guys, I'm sure, it can be exhausting, right? I mean, you have to literally be at your best from the net out each and every week to give yourself a chance. And then crazy things happen. I mean, there's upsets, there's things go, different ways, and dependent on the week. I mean, and our guys understand that. I think that was what our guys were most disappointed about this past week. And I thought they felt like they, very uncharacteristic of us, got outworked in certain situations and found ourselves losing 2 games. So certainly don't want that to be the case this week. And we know that if we're at our best, we'll give ourselves an opportunity to win, and that's our focus.
All right, so we're looking forward to a great college hockey matchup this weekend, and of course, looking forward to Bruins Senators. I know Judd's fired up. You fired up?
Yeah, I love college hockey. Especially the Beanpot coming up. That's going to be terrific, both the men's and the women's.
Yeah, absolutely. Got the championship game coming your way on the women's side at TD Garden on Tuesday. Before that, you got BU, UNH on Friday right here on Nesson. Or Saturday, matinee game in Ottawa. Pre-game coverage kicks off at 2 o'clock on Nesson. Had a good time, buddy.
Awesome. Great stuff. We need some sort of a farewell. I don't know what it is, but I think we've got to work it out here.
Yeah. Well, as we've closed the book on 29 episodes. We'll look ahead to episode 30 and how we can get better as well here on the Hockey Hub podcast.
I think you also need the number behind you. You know what? You can kind of flip it over. Like, oh yeah, done.
Great idea. See, look at us. See, we don't mail it in at the end of the show. We we generate ideas. All right.
Like Pete Rose, baby. I don't give away at bats.
Let's put a bow on this. We'll see you next time on the Hockey Hub.